All right. So I want to welcome everyone to another episode of Love Over Coffee, Voices Not Heard. This is a dear friend who shares a birthday month with me, so that's always exciting. I'm on the 4th, and you are.
The ninth.
That's what I thought. I was going to say the 9th, and then the 11th popped in my brain. And I was like, I'll let her say. Um, so, Love Over Coffee, Voices Not Heard is a podcast and a platform for the marginalized, the silenced, and the abused. And it is an opportunity for us to have a conversation over whatever drink of your choice. Mine happens to be coffee, but the
Milk.
idea is to have a shared conversation that reaches a common ground, as well as Kathleen has lived experiences that you and I may never have. And so growing through her, from her, um, back to an opportunity to reflect is what we always hope to gain over a conversation with a friend at a coffee shop or, wherever it might be. So I want to welcome Kathleen Niestadt to the podcast. We've seen her before. So, in fact, the podcast is now 2 years old, Kathleen.
Gosh, I can't believe it's been that
I
long.
can't believe it either. I mean, when I did the first podcast, I was so nervous. It was 2 years ago on June 1st, which is World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. And, I did the marathon session I started at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
My first guest wasn't able to show up, so we had to wing it. My 6 o'clock guest was in England. And I was like, well, this is not going well. And then we got a groove going. And
Yeah.
it just went from there, back to back to back. And I think we ended probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. And so on Thursday, it is World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. So Kathleen and I are recording this one day early. But we have basically stories starting at 7 o'clock. So tomorrow night, 7 p.m., we will begin the sessions. And Kathleen will be showing up around the 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock hour. It depends upon how the 9 o'clock hour goes. So we're kind of playing it by ear. But anyway, I always start with the same question. So welcome, Kathleen. The first question is, tell us who you are, where you've been, and where you're going. And please tell us what you feel safe and comfortable sharing. So we'll leave it there.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I am a woman who has been through a lot, like I think everybody else. I had a lot of childhood abuse. I had childhood sexual abuse, physical abuse. At one point in that abuse, it started at 4 years of age and went through till I was 11 and a half. I was trafficked during that time. That was familial abuse by my grandfather. And I had a really rocky teenage life, depression, anxiety, thoughts of self-harm, suicide, just really, had struggle. I dissociated a lot. And then later, as an adult, found out that I have dissociative identity disorder. So anyway, had rough early life. Then I married. Was 21 when I got married, and spent the next 20 years married to a narcissistic abuser. So that's where I've been.
And that's where we
almost
bonded.
10 years divorced.
That is where we bonded.
That's right.
The first time I met you, um, when I was trying to find the words and find the bearing and put my feet on the ground and talk about narcissism and talk about some of the things that it looked like. Um, I didn't have to explain much to you because you had been through it. And it was a comfort and a safety that I still to this day really appreciate, because if you haven't been through true narcissistic abuse, whether it's based on just they're toxic and they're abusive, or they have narcissistic personality disorder, because we obviously cannot diagnose. But, unless someone has truly been through it, it's an odd, in my opinion, type of abuse that doesn't always take the physical realm. I know in your case there was some sexual component realm that it went to, marital rape, but it also can just be mental, emotional, financial abuse, which was my situation, and I didn't even recognize it as abuse, because my statement was, and I think so many women will say it, and men, they never hit me. I wonder now,
Right.
if he hit me, if I would have stood up stronger sooner. But I didn't have that experience. And so for a long time, I just thought he was an asshole and difficult. And I just was bringing it out in him somehow,
Yeah.
because every day I heard that I was the reason why something had happened.
Right.
And
Right.
I just didn't connect it with abuse. I just, like I said, I just thought he was an asshole. And
Yeah.
yet, the more of an asshole he became, I wasn't able to break away. It was it was like, why am I staying? Why am I, so
Right.
I'm glad that I met you, because you were one of those first people that kind of confirmed that I wasn't the crazy one and that I wasn't alone.
Right.
So
Right.
thank you.
Right. Well, I think the thing about narcissism is it's that whole, put the frog in the pot, slowly turn the heat up. The frog doesn't even realize it's boiling. And that's exactly, where I was and where you were. And it's like, because sometimes now I'll think, I cannot believe I stayed 20 years in that marriage. We had 3 children, and I would look back sometimes and be like, oh, I just wanted, the family in my head, was not the family I was living, but it was just, that's what I was striving so hard to make. And I was trying so hard. And, but that kind of honestly only fueled his narcissism, because it was like, if you would have dinner ready at 6 o'clock, if you would have this, if you would do this, if you would have, sex with me every day, if you would have, and so then I was trying even harder to make this family in my head, the
That's
family.
what I think is weird, is that we become so focused on the illusion of what was created when we first met the individual through the tactic of love bombing. But at some point, the love bombing, it switches from them to you're more attached to the illusion than you are to them. But yet breaking away and getting and losing that illusion, that's the part that the narcissist will say, see, she's crazy, she can't let go, I told you she can't let go. But you were groomed, just like with a pedophile predator. You're groomed to believe this thing, and this thing doesn't really exist. And every time you try to say, well, we're not really doing that, are we? Then you're reeled back in. Yes, we are. And then as soon as you get reeled back in and you're ready to settle in, and it's like, okay, the ride is good again, then they drive really fast and they go really crazy, and you're thinking, but this is not what we were doing. What are
Right.
we doing now?
Now
And
what are we doing?
you're constantly this, and your body starts to, as soon as you go up, your body waits for the moment to come down. And as soon as your body comes down, it waits for the moment to go back up, because the fight or flight response um, is your survival, except you don't know that either. You're
Right.
just like along for the ride, and you're just like,
Because it's always changing. Yeah, it's always changing. It's so confusing. It's like one minute this is your fault, the next minute, it might be, oh, I don't know, here's a flower, you know what I mean? And you're just kind of like, what just happened? I
right,
can't tell you how many times I literally thought that to myself, like, what just happened? Like, first we were fine, and all of a sudden he's flying in a rage off of me. But like you said, I mean, yes, I did have, marital rape, but it wasn't like some people might, I guess, think. And yes, there was
right,
a little of the physical, where he might block me from leaving a room, or, he punched me early on in our marriage, but we were kind of goofing around. And, but then he got mad and he hit me, and he hit me hard. And so, I mean, it was like, wait, that's not playing around. But,
right,
it wasn't like he'd left me with a black eye. And again, in my mind, I always compared it kind of to, the horrific abuse I had when I was a child. This was
right,
horrific. It was just, like you said, though, more of the mental, and more of the, because again, it allowed me, I say allowed, but, I didn't say, I'm leaving. I
right.
didn't say, because I was so entangled by the time these things kind of had happened, like you said,
Do you still find yourself sometimes, um, like, because we both left our relationships with complex PTSD.
Yeah.
So PTSD is usually one event so traumatic your brain cannot let go of what all you felt during that one moment. So for someone who is raped, or for someone who is maybe witness to a murder or saw someone murdered, those images stay with you and you cannot let go, and survivor's guilt, whatever you want to call it, you replay it. But complex PTSD um, is what they compare to being in a war. It's the constant daily barrage of trauma. And you get to the point where you're just surviving on a daily. But I find sometimes when something is triggered, a memory comes back and it's like, that's why he said that,
Yeah.
or that's why he did that.
Yeah.
Like my brain, as my brain has healed, I've been able to connect more dots.
Yes.
And those dots were dots that were very confusing at the time, made no sense. Okay. But now that I am 5 years post abuse, the dots are like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes sense. Because it's like there's always an agenda for them,
Yeah.
but you are unaware of that agenda. But
Yeah.
now you realize, between the agenda and what you know about narcissism and what your own body has allowed yourself to heal from after 5 years, for me, you begin to realize, oh, that makes sense now. That
Yeah.
was certainly one of those up moments and one of those down moments. The agenda, there was like a 3 week window where something was operating and you didn't know what was operating. And then about 3 weeks later, it's like, ah,
Oh, now I get it. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. When it's interesting, because the reason why we're recording this is because I'm on vacation. I'm in Alabama right now.
woo.
I know. But I'm with my sister, and this whole week has just been like, oh yeah, I remember one vacation, and just all these memories of just past vacations that we had.
Right.
And what's amazing about my sister is I'm like, I know you're so sick of hearing me. She's like, this week is our week, because this is the first time that my sister and I've ever done a vacation
Oh,
together,
wow.
and it's been exciting. But she's like, I will listen to you over and over and over with whatever you want to talk about. So, and I will say she's had her own experiences. So, we both are kind of like, well, she'll be like, well, this is what happened when we went on the vacation. And then I'd be like, yep, that's about what so we were kind of.
Right. And they always ruin, narcissists love to ruin basic things. Your birthday.
Yes.
Your birthday is always magnificent, wonderful, and but they always ruin your birthday or Valentine's or Christmas or the kids' birthdays or some big occasion that you have that you want to celebrate, and somehow they're busy and can't be there that day, even though they have said, oh, I support you. Oh, no, I love what you're doing. Oh, no. And then it's like, well, I have a graduation ceremony on such and such. Can't be there. And you're like, okay. So it's not surprising that you have vacation stories, because like I said, that's a time when most people are so excited and so close with their loved one or significant others. And I have to say, for those people who are watching and listening, narcissism does not just exist between two partners in a relationship. So narcissism can be in the workplace, it can be in community activism, it can be with family, friends. Strangers can gaslight you, strangers can manipulate you. So narcissism is something that in our society has certainly taken a forefront. I'll be honest, when I first heard the word narcissist, I thought of the mythology, Greek mythology, the Narcissus, the character in Greek mythology that saw his own shadow and reflection in the water and fell in love with himself. And I thought narcissism was just someone really stuck on themselves and couldn't walk by a mirror without looking.
I did too.
It seems like social media has certainly generated more narcissism. It's certainly become another tool of manipulation for a narcissist. But why have you ever thought about, or do you have any thoughts about why it is so prevalent? A statistic I heard, Kathleen, was that at one point in time, we were 30% narcissistic and 70% empathic, and that those numbers have switched.
Wow. I mean, it doesn't surprise me in a way.
I know.
But I'm like, and see, I always thought, well, it's me because I see everybody now as narcissistic. But then I'm like, I have to always check myself, because then it's like, no, like that person really isn't. Maybe they really are wrapped up kind of in themselves, but there are different, markers of narcissism. And, no, I'm not a psychologist. I can't just, but living with somebody who has had a psychologist say, yes, you are narcissistic, and there are differences.
Well, and you think about the whole narcissistic traits or characteristics or tendencies could be self-preservation.
Yeah.
And yet there is then that line of movement on a continuum that takes you to the narcissistic personality disorder, which is the mental disordered individual. And there's no real pill for a personality disorder and that level of abuse. and like I said, the gamut could be somewhere from, you know, toxic,
Yeah.
physical, sexual abuse,
Mm-hmm.
to all the way to the gaslighting and the mental and emotional manipulation, the future faking, um, because that's what I got involved with. So you actually married the individual.
Yeah.
And there can be, I guess, there can be an element of future faking too. Oh, we'll do that next year. Oh, yeah, that vacation. That's a great idea.
Right.
We'll plan that next year, and you never get there. But in my situation, the future faking was, I love who we are and what we're doing, and this relationship has been just a godsend, and yet everything that's being said and done is to the complete opposite and detriment of the relationship. And yet every time you try to let go of the relationship and say, well, I'm going to start dating other people, there's this moment of rage, and you're like, but you're like cheating, but you're
Yeah.
like talking to other people. So how does that exactly fit in with this scenario?
Yeah.
But again, that's where they let you out a little bit, and then they
Yeah.
reel you back in. And
Right.
that's very confusing. So future faking for some of us is a tool of manipulation.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. With mine, he would say, because like I think the money, it, and again, like it took me forever to kind of figure all this out. Like you said, that connecting the dot. I mean, I'm still connecting dots, and it's like he wasn't so overt with most of his. I mean, some of his right abuse was overt, but
you look back and it was obvious.
yeah, but I mean, most of it was under the rug, and so like,
Certainly not in front of other people.
well, yeah, and he would, like he was big into comic book collecting. And I mean, like he would buy a comic book collection from somebody off Craigslist or something for like, $5,000, but then not give me money for the kids' haircuts. I mean, like, and I mean, he would literally say to me like these words, well, like I would say, the kids need, school clothes. Well, you better go to Goodwill. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Goodwill,
Right.
but I'm
But
just
you
saying
just can't.
we're talking about just going to, like I never even had money to like go to Walmart and buy new clothes for my kids, because he wouldn't do that. But yet we had all kinds of money for whenever he wanted to buy what
Right.
comic book collectibles, anything, So what he would do though is like he would call, he'd call me and be like, oh, I've got this, person who'll sell me their comic book collection for $6,000. What do you think? And I'll be, and like at first when we got married, I was like, oh, sure, you're the one handling the money, and stuff. But that was before we had 3 kids, and so, but he would still do that. You know what I mean? And it's like,
And it's
even
almost like he wanted you to be the mama to say, no, we can't spend that. But actually he isn't calling you to be the mama. He's calling
no,
you to manipulate you in such a way and to catch you off
yes,
guard, to where it's like, well, I don't really know what to say.
right.
And then there's that moment of when you don't say anything and they do it anyway, then 6 months later it's like, well, you let me spend the money. And it's like,
That's what I'm gonna, yeah, because he at first, like I said, when it was just the 2 of us, we had the money. I was working full time, he was working full time, and stuff. But as relationships happen, things change. And again, when kids come on the scene, and I was a stay-at-home mom, so instead of like a healthy relationship, pitching in, giving help, doing, part, no, it was like the kids came along. It was more like, like if he had to watch the kids, he was babysitting the kids. It's like, they're your kids, but it was that mentality. But like with the money, like I said in the beginning, I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead. But then it's like, well, we've got, this due, or we have this due with the kids, or school starting, and, it's going to be kind of expensive. And, then he'd be like, well, don't you trust me? I thought you trusted me. So, then I would say, okay, if we have the money, if you think we have the money, oh yeah. And, he would always be like, I'll sell it. I'll double our money. I'll sell it back and double, and I'll get $12,000. But here's the thing. Did he ever put $12,000 in our account? No, because, first of all, he would break it up and keep good stuff. And, it was like, we never, doubled the money, because, or like the time it took him to sell off what he sold and it doubled the money, we had so many other expenses come up that it never, but see, that took me years to figure that out.
Right.
And so then when we would have money, he would be like, well, you're the one that said I could get that comic book collection. Why did you say yes? And I'm just like, okay, well, because, if I say no, then, so, but I mean, it was in 2012, that was when I was like, okay, we need to do counseling. And we had done counseling before, but I thought, I need to be different in this counseling scenario. I can't make him change. I'm going to be different. I'm going to speak my truth, no matter how scary it is. Right. And, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I've got to do it. I have to be truth, because I thought, I don't know if we're going to, I just don't know how much more of this I can take. Because I was starting, I have a lot of health issues, and I have MS, I have heart disease, and a lot of other big, issues. And I was getting sick, and I was getting sick and sick and sicker and sicker. Right. And, I'd get well, and then I'd get sick, and I'd get well, and then I'd get sick again. I mean, it was tough. And, when I'm thinking physically, I don't know how much more of this I can take. And again, see, it wasn't that physical abuse, but his abuse was physically harming me.
I have just now recently come to that conclusion myself. Yeah. I've often said along the road of my own journey that there was no physical or sexual component to the relationship. But now I realize that there was a sexual component, because indirectly my weight and my need to feel desired was a button he pushed every day, that he cheated with someone else, and at the same time wouldn't let me out of his sight to actually go find someone who could love me the way I deserve to be loved and worthy of love. And so that was a string he manipulated constantly. I want you, I love you, you're my angel. And at the same time, I'm cheating with everyone else. And what it was doing to me was, the sexual component was, I must not be good enough. I must be too fat. I must be too ugly. I must be too something. And it was very confusing to me, because it's like, you're sleeping with everyone else, but you've never slept with me. I even went so far as to convince myself that there was a little bit of that Madonna whore syndrome. Like, I'm going to keep her on the pedestal, and I'm going to do all the other things with all these other women. And I'm going to keep her on that pedestal, serene and safe and secure. And she's the queen. But it really did impact me. And it also kept me hanging around thinking, well, eventually he'll figure out they're all bimbos, and I'll finally rise to the top. But there was no rising to the top, because I realize now I was really nothing but a money supply.
Yeah.
And a social and intellectual supply. And then, of course, the physical, as you mentioned, I realized that I have teeth issues now, because I was spending every dime investing in a future that didn't include me. Yeah. And now I'm getting ready to, face major dental surgery, things I could have avoided. So there are things that have impacted me physically and sexually, but they're more indirect. And I haven't really connected that dot.
Yeah.
Until just recently.
Yeah. And, and I think that's what's harmful, when, people are not educated in narcissism and in narcissistic abuse, because again, it's just kind of like, because, I think about when we as a family, would go out, or, now you know, um, he would coach, sometimes at the school at the kids went to a small private school, he would coach, and, there were issues sometimes with his coaching and things. Um, but, I think for the most part, people don't see, people don't hear, what goes on. You don't know what happens behind closed doors.
Right.
And, I mean, and the thing is, like, I remember he was the coach of my daughter's basketball team when she was in middle school. And we would get in the car after, the games, and he would just talk horrible about the team, the girls, specific girls, just, how dumb they were. And he couldn't believe that they couldn't get this play, and, how bad the refs were. I mean, just like everything was, and it was all negative. But then, and I'm like, your daughter is in the back seat.
Right.
And you're talking about her friends, her school, and my sons. You're talking about their school, their teachers, their PE teachers, your assistant coach. I mean, it's just like,
right.
So it affected everybody. And again, it was just that negativity. And it wasn't like he might make one negative comment. It was like from the time we got into the car, I mean, through till, like we'd be in home and changing clothes, for bed, and he'd still go on about, just couldn't believe this, and just, how incompetent they are. And I mean, it was just like
relentless.
It was
that again, that's that complex PTSD. It's that constant barrage of just daily crap that you can't sort out, and yet over time it becomes so normal that it's hard to even.
And you're so worn down. You're so worn down. Mm-hmm. Again, just driving, to down here to Alabama with my sister. Like I was talking about how I would not drive with him in the car because he could not stop talking about my driving and how bad it was. And it was so, I mean, again, and it was so over the top, the criticism and just, everything. And it was like, I just got to where I was like, I don't want to drive. I'm not going to drive, but it wasn't like I stood up to him and being like, shut up, just no, it was just like, I got worn down until I was just kind of nothing, or watching the news.
Describe it. Also is you just begin to shrink away. You don't even know, you barely know what's happening.
Yeah.
And even when you can see what's happening, you're so worn down to even fight it. At a certain point, you're just like, do I even really care anymore? Like, I don't, like everything I've done or not done, said or not said, none of it worked. So it's like, what's left? I don't know what's left because there wasn't much of me left by the time things were over. I mean, really, you almost have to come out of that relationship, whether it be family or friends or coworkers, when you leave a job, and you almost like have to find yourself again and begin at some of the simplest things in order to start climbing again, because all sense of self has been lost. And I often say, not only did they steal who you were, but they sometimes, if not careful, they could steal who you could be, because you're so lost and confused, you don't even know where to begin. I mean, it's like, I couldn't even tell you what my favorite pizza was, because everything revolved around him.
Right.
His favorite places, his favorite this, his favorite that, his friends, his this, his that. There was no Tina.
Yeah. And I'm sure, and it's funny because it's so, all of these things are all these petty things, like you said, just like even about food, it was like, well, we always order what you want. Well, I mean, I had after my third child was born, I found out I had celiac disease. And I mean, it was like he wouldn't eat, gluten-free, and no, like our world was not going to be turned upside down because of my, but then we found out my daughter had it. His world did not change, so I was, cooking meals for us, cooking meals for him. And, and I mean, but it was always like, well, you never buy what I like. You always just get what you want. And it was just stupid stuff. But, you hear it over and over and every day. And it's like I said, it's unrelenting. And I knew things were really bad when I got to the point where I was thinking, please just hit me. If you just would hit me, then I would know this is me. I need to leave. Like, and I don't mean like a little, I mean, like, give me a black eye, hit me, and then I'd be like, this is not good. Because I was constantly running interference because the kids would make him mad. And I was very afraid that he was, and he would spank the kids and he would get mad, and I was constantly having to run interference. And, things were escalating. And I'm glad we got out when we did. Just because, I don't know where we would be.
That's what the physical exhaustion is one thing. And you deal with that when you're first coming out, but the mental and emotional exhaustion is something that I think takes a while to recover. It takes a while for the brain to settle back down. And as I was telling you before we went live, or before we went recorded, that they have just recently been saying that in an emergency where things are complete chaos and confusion, like in a situation like 9/11 or some situation really big like that the best person to have on your team is someone who is basically endured trauma, because that trauma triggers you into that fight or flight response. And there's no one who can organize chaos better than someone who has lived in a home that is chaotic and confusing and dominated daily by that confusion and that chaos, and that somehow you just kick into gear. And it's like, well, I need you to do this, and I need you to do that, and I need you to go over there, and I need you to. And it's like, I think about teachers. The classroom is chaotic, and yet somehow a really good teacher just manages that chaos and just is very calm in the storm. And for those of us that have been through what we've been through, that's what kicks in. It also kicks into our detriment.
Yeah.
Like, I've learned to calm myself down in the midst of chaos. And I don't know if that's necessarily always a good response, but it's like, well, you go have your breakdown, because I'm going to have a cup of coffee. I don't know what you're doing, but you just go over there, do whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
When you're ready to act like an adult, you can come back and join me for coffee. But until then, you just stay over there. And it's like, it's like, I don't want to deal with you. I can't deal with you. And guess what? I'm not going to.
Right. I think the thing about narcissism is that it is so broad, and and there's so many, like you said earlier, like there's like toxic, and there's this and that. And I don't even mean like talking just about labeling it, but I'm just saying, the narcissist, they can kind of pick and choose when they want to do what they want. When they do, they can turn it off in public, and they turn it right back on when you get in the car, or they can turn it off when, you're with your family or at a birthday party, or they can turn it on at and it's just like, again, you don't know. And you don't know how bad, you don't know when, where, and
They're a chameleon. I mean, it's like they're very in tune with and smart, in the sense that they can adapt to any situation. But they're adapting to the situation. It's almost like it is the natural ability to manipulate or gaslight or triangulate. Those are all terms that are associated usually with narcissism, but they do it like turning on water. It's like it becomes so natural to them that for someone who's watching from the outside, I can see why the victim, the true victim, would look like the crazy one, because they're the one making everything seem possible and plausible, and yet at the same moment they're the ones behind the scenes pulling the strings and playing puppet a little bit. Well, that brings me to, I found a video about gaslighting, because I think gaslighting, I mean, I think we know what manipulation can look like, but gaslighting is not a term I was familiar with. And there's an old movie called Gaslight, and I don't know if you've ever watched it. I think it would be interesting to get a bunch of people together and watch that movie. But in that movie, he is literally and systematically messing with the lights in the house by turning up and turning down the gas. But when she says, "Did you see that light flicker?" or "Did you see that?" he says no. He calls into question her reality and
her sanity.
And her and her ability to process what's real and what's not real. And so gaslighting is something that it took me a long time, and I'm still not always certain that I have a good handle on an understanding of it, but yet I can sometimes recognize it. So the video I'm going to share has a little bit, it has 10 examples of gaslighting. So let's take a moment and just watch that a little bit. So I'm going to share the screen. And let me see. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I want to, hang on. Let me see if I can. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. Woohoo! Okay. Sometimes I'm dangerous, right?
We all are.
Okay. So let me go to the tab. I'm going to start it.
While you do that, I'm going to turn the light on.
Hey Psych2Goers, welcome back to the channel.
We
wanted to take a moment and be sure you knew how grateful we were for all your support. Your ongoing support is what helps us make psychology and mental health more accessible to everyone. Now let's continue. Gaslighting is a word that's used a lot in the media these days, but what does gaslighting actually mean? The term originates from the Patrick Hamilton's original 1939 stage play Gaslight, where a husband psychologically manipulates his wife. In the story, the husband attempts to convince his wife that she is insane by manipulating small elements of their environment and insisting that she is mistaken, remembering things incorrectly when she points out the changes he makes. The play's title alludes to how the abusive husband slowly dims the gaslights in their home while pretending nothing has changed, in an effort to make his wife doubt her own perceptions. Gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse where someone leads you to question your own reality, memory, or perceptions. So, here are 10 examples of what gaslighting can sound like. As a disclaimer, we want to note that not everyone who says these phrases is automatically a gaslighter. Gaslighting is intentional, and a gaslighter knows exactly what they're saying and what they're doing. 1. What did I do to you? If someone responds to you this way, they may genuinely not know what they have done and are asking you about it. But when it's gaslighting, they are aware they have done something to hurt you and are pretending to play dumb. In defensively posing this question to you, they are denying the impact they had on you and are also forcing you to question it. 2. Everyone around you isn't the problem. The problem is you. This is sometimes used as a way to shut down the conversation or dialogue for whatever is happening. This type of language is often referred to as victim blaming, where the gaslighter will make statements that cause you to feel like you are the problem, even when you have fallen victim to something such as bullying or abuse and the situation is outside of your direct control. 3. I'm sorry you feel that way. When someone's hurt you and they say something like this, then it is not a true apology. Instead, it's a way to make you feel like you are the problem. They say that they're sorry that you feel the way you do, rather than apologizing for what they've done or how they made you feel. 4. I don't remember saying that. I think you made that up. This is the go-to phrase that a gaslighter will use to intentionally get you to question your experience, behavior, and thoughts in order to take the focus off of them. 5. It's your anxiety that made me do the things I do. This is a common response when a gaslighter gets called out for their behavior. They use this as a reason to justify their own negative behavior when in fact, they should take responsibility for their own actions instead of choosing to blame you. 6. You need help. This term is used to imply that you are the problem and that you need to address your issues rather than them having to work through their own issues. This is a shutdown response to avoid working things through with you. 7. It's your fault. People who gaslight will neglect any responsibility for their actions or for a situation. Instead, they will directly blame others. This can be a repetitive cycle where you may be made to feel like something is your fault, even if it isn't. You may even apologize for things that aren't your fault to make peace with them. 8. You're too emotional. This implies that your characteristics are seen as flaws, and this can make you question your own sense of who you are. 9. It's not a big deal. People who gaslight have a tendency to minimize the impact that something has on you. They may make you feel like you are making a bigger deal out of something when you are within your right to talk about things that are bothering you and express yourself openly. 10. Why are you so defensive all the time? You're attacking me. This is a common phrase used when you challenge a gaslighter. They have a tendency to flip the conversation towards you and make it out like you are the one who is in the wrong. By accusing you of being defensive and that you're attacking them, then they become the victim. Do any of these phrases sound familiar to you?
All of
These
them.
are only some of the things a gaslighter will say to you. You may have heard these before or even said them yourself, but this does not necessarily mean you have been gaslighted or that you are a gaslighter. Gaslighting is intentional, and a gaslighter knows full well what they are saying and what they are doing. We encourage you to seek help or guidance if you suspect that gaslighting has played a role in your life. Please like and share this video if it helped you and you think it can help someone else too. The studies and references used are listed in the description below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell icon for more Psych2Go videos. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
So, when I watched that, I was like, that is probably one of the best. Oh, hang on. Let me see. Let me hear what's going on here. Okay, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Hang on. Don't
Okay.
leave me.
I won't.
Okay. Are we back?
Yes.
I think we're back.
Right.
So when I watched that, I was like, oh my, like it was one of the best examples
Yeah.
presented that I've seen on gaslighting. Cause this
Yeah.
was something that, I was always too something. I was too much. I was too emotional, too this,
Yeah.
too that, too stupid. All of the things that they said were all things that I would sometimes question myself. more than what he was doing.
Yes.
So I think it's very, very necessary to say gaslighting to manipulate is intentional. So you and I might both say things like, well, I'm really sorry you felt that way. But a narcissist is intentionally saying it in that way because they want to twist it. And it's in that twisting that creates your confusion, your cognitive dissonance, your off balance, while they rise to the top and they maintain control. And that is the biggest, I think, difference between someone who says those things and they are unintentional versus a gaslighter who is intentionally manipulating in this way. But I've learned through activism work, intention does not negate impact. So even though it's intentional or unintentional, the result is the same.
Right.
But wow.
Well,
So,
and I think though, if something is unintentional, you can work with it.
right.
But when they do it intentionally, you can't work with that. And I will just say, in 2012, when we started our counseling, I mean, wow, what a roller coaster that was. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, we went, I don't remember how long we were going. I mean, we were going every week, and I don't know how long we had been going. And every week was, I mean, it was volatile almost, it was just hostile. He and the therapist would go at it, and it's not like, oh, he was a bad therapist. I mean, it was just, I think the more we went, the more the therapist knew I needed help.
Well, and Kathleen, to your defense, you were seeing it happening in real time to someone else. You probably recognized the manipulation that he was doing of her in a way that you had not recognized it for yourself because you were one step removed. Because that's what that was the point that I also reached, and that is I could stand back and listen to him tell a story and realize that's not what you said last time.
Yeah.
Or that some detail got switched around because now this person was listening who could do this for you. And so you brought up this point in the story this time, but versus the last time, this other person who could have helped with some other element of the story, that's the part you emphasized.
Right.
And you're sitting there and you're like, hmm. So
Right.
you were seeing it in real time, up close and personal.
Right. Well, I think, shoot, I kind of lost my train of thought. Well, I know in our therapy sessions, it got so bad that the therapist was writing word for word what he said because, my ex would say something, the therapist would say, okay, so you blah, 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 blah. And then he would say, I didn't say that. And the therapist would be like, yes, you did. And then they would kind of get into this back and forth. And I would be like, yes, you did. And then he'd be like, you're turning Kathleen against me in the way you're talking. And it's like, we're in this, the three of us. And it's like, and I'm like, oh my word, like, this is bad. Like, this is scary bad, And I mean, it really went downhill fast because, I think my ex was feeling maybe cornered, or just feeling like, okay, everything I've worked so hard to kind of,
maintain control over.
I'm losing control. And she's, my wife is, now against me and, again, and it's like, but, and he would tell other people like the therapist is is turning my wife against me. But then other people, he would say, my wife is turning our therapist against me. I mean, it was just whatever story he needed to tell that fit his narrative, he would tell it. And I mean, I was already messed up before I even got to this marriage. And maybe that wasn't super fair to him. I didn't know I was as messed up as I was,
Right.
you know. But I mean, he just made it worse. And he pretty much, solidified everything that, I was told in my childhood. People, no one wants to be with you and you're worthless and you're stupid. And, but again, he wouldn't use those words. And see, like, that's what I would be listening for. You're stupid. Well, instead of that, he'd be like, well, you can't do math. I'll do, or like, if I questioned his financial, decisions, it would be like, here, you do the finances. And when they cut off our electric, don't come running to me, I mean, so it was like, then I would beat myself up even more, so I mean, it was, there for a while. He didn't really have to do much because
you start to do it to yourself,
doing it to myself. And again, then, but then things just got out of hand, and I could not, I could not maintain. I could not, I couldn't live because, again, physically I was getting sicker and I was mentally getting sicker. I mean, I was suicidal, and, but then, the psychiatrist had told my ex, you buy a lockbox and you need to, put her prescriptions in it, get a combination, only the combination, and, lock up her medicine. And he told him, this isn't permanent. This is just, until she gets, we can get her through this. And, and my ex would not buy the lockbox, told me it was just, he wasn't going to spend that kind of money on buying a lockbox. It was like $50, whatever, I asked him to. So then, he didn't buy it, but then went to the psychiatrist's office with me, told the psychiatrist he bought a lockbox. And of course, yeah, I know I'm sitting there. He's lying. I know he's lying. I'm like in shock because I'm like, you're actually telling the psychiatrist, like, I was shocked that he would do that with somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, that was kind of one of the first times I actually ever saw him flat out lie.
Those are those moments when you realize you can't make this shit up.
Yes. And it was like, he knew that I knew he was lying, but it wasn't like, wink, wink at me, like, go along with it, honey. It was like, I don't care. You're not going to challenge me. You're not going to say anything. Mm-hmm. And again, that, did that spur me to action? No, because then
that's when you realize how controlled you are, because
it scared
you realize they're lying, but you don't speak up because you know that speaking up, number one, it doesn't do any good, and second, they'll be hell to pay when you get home. And it's like you've just learned to shrink down into the situation, and you just, it's like, I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever you're saying today, we'll just go with that story.
Right.
And you start to realize that you know what's going on, and yet your ability and or desire to leave isn't even there anymore. Like staying or going has the same thought process.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and at that was the moment I realized how far he would go. Because again, it was like, okay, before, like, he would lie to me or whatever, or lie to my kids and stuff. I didn't realize he was lying to other people. And I had never, like I said, had never actually been a party to him. And, there were times when, like, he did things I knew were wrong, but, I don't know, was able to kind of maybe think, well, make up your own
Oh yeah, no, I get
justification
it.
for what he did. But this was like, there was none there. I could not justify anything because it was just the
Mhm.
three of us in the psychiatrist's office. Have you bought the lockbox? Yes, I bought the lockbox. I put her medicine in it. I give it to her twice a day. I mean, and I just sat there, I could not.
Dumbfounded.
I was, because, and here's what was really happening. He told me to leave the room. He would put the medicine up over the stove. I'm short, so, I couldn't reach it. But every morning he would get it out. He would make me leave like the kitchen. And my kids would be there getting ready for school, eating breakfast. He'd make them leave, or make me leave the kitchen. And I could hear him say, well, your mom's messed up. Your mom's crazy. I got to get her medicine out because she can't take her own medicine. I have to give your mom her medicine. And I would be like in the very next room, like just, and I'd start to cry and I'd have to
Well, I
leave.
was going to say feeling worthless
I
and
felt like shit, excuse my language, but and then, I would have to take the kids to school. Mom, why can't you take your medicine? And I mean, they were young.
Mhm.
And, it was horrible. And again, yeah, like you said, it's like, okay, I'm going to leave and what's going to happen? I mean, he's already telling the psychiatrist,
Right.
he's already lying to my psychiatrist.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, he's not going to stop.
Well, and I know in my own situation, the moment was, again, watching him up close and personal with other people and realizing that the details in the stories were changing,
Yeah.
and realizing again that the story contained some major inconsistencies. And then I started to realize that at some point, not only was he gaming me, but he was using me to game other people, to entice them into the same web of deceit. And
Mhm.
so I was becoming a part of his game to manipulate others. And I thought, wait a minute, you messing me up is one thing, but you're not going to use me to help mess up other people
Yeah.
and to somehow get them to believe something that's a complete farce,
Yeah.
that's not happening, and yet somehow you want me to be a part of that manipulation. And
Yeah.
that's when it was like, oh no, this has to change. I don't know how and I don't know when, but
Yeah.
this can't go on. And so I started realizing that I had to make some sort of change. But I just didn't know how or when or why. Well, I knew the why, I guess, but I didn't know the how or the when.
Uh-huh.
And it was just, it took some time to get your actions behind where your mind is,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
again, when you've been worn down mentally and emotionally, it's hard to get the physical to kick in gear and
Yeah.
to actually physically leave. This is why, people who say, why did you stay or why didn't you leave? They have no idea that most of what is happening at a certain point is happening in your head,
Yeah.
and you can't make sense of it.
Yeah.
So it only makes sense that you can't take an action because you can barely process what is happening, let alone a way out. I know that we are a little bit over time, so I just wanted to take a moment and give you a chance because I know you're doing some great things, and so we have healed and we have our moments to process. And I think that there comes a time when we should never forget where it is that we have come from,
Yeah.
because that is what gives us our empathic ability to connect with others who are going through what we've been through.
Yeah.
So I think that as much as we know who we are and as much as we know where we've been, we also have to focus on where are we going. So take a moment and tell us where you are now and what's going on. And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and play the ticker at the bottom.
Okay.
That talks about the website as to where you are. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, for 6 months, I've been working at Kentucky Youth Advocates. Yay. And I'm a strategic initiatives coordinator. And sounds fancy. I love the work, and we are a backbone agency for a lot of different organizations, and we help with collaboration with other organizations. And yeah, go check out the website because we do a lot of stuff, and I could spend another hour telling you everything that we do. I'm also at part-time in school. I'm at the Kent School of Social Work at the University of. So yeah, I'm working towards getting my social work degree, and hopefully going as far as I can go with my education, and trying to really continue to be the advocate, and continue to use my story and use my experience of the healing that I've experienced to let people know that they're not alone, and to walk with people, because it's not just oh, okay, I get it, bye, or whatever. It's having that relationship and that connection that I think is really important, and knowing that you've got somebody that's going to say, yep, I understand what you're saying, and I'm sorry that you went through that, and you are stronger than you might think. Yeah, that's where I'm doing. I still speak anytime anyone wants me to come and speak to a group or an organization or whatever. And I work with human trafficking. I work with child sex abuse, and so that's where I am. And
it's amazing. It's amazing. Because when I first met Kathleen, it was through a local nonprofit in Louisville that dealt with survivors and their trauma. And, Kathleen would start the sessions because I think I had one of her first groups, and she was there was those moments of discomfort with, you want me to do the meditation and you want me to do the journal, and there was a it was like, once she got into it, she was excellent, but that little bit of confidence wasn't there. And now when I see you, it's a complete shift.
Yeah.
But I know that you had confidence then, you just weren't as confident to show it. So but now it's like, I'm ready. And I know we still have those moments, but it's amazing. And without sounding odd or weird or degrading, I'm really proud of you, because when I see you do it, it inspires and lets me know that I can do it. And that is the best reward, is when someone can look at you and say, if she can do it, I can do it. And between the two of us, it's going to be change the world. So I really appreciate you taking time on your vacation in Alabama to come on and pre-record. I do want to share just briefly, for those of you who are out there, we've talked a lot about healing trauma and what that looks like over the course of a lot of episodes of Love Over Coffee. So one of the things that has grown out of Love Over Coffee podcast is a Love Over Coffee subscription box. So the subscription box, we had our February-March box. We're getting ready to come up on our May-June box. This is a cup that I designed for the February-March box. So this box has items, activities, and knowledge to help foster self love, self care, which are the founding blocks of building and healing trauma. So we have, I'm only doing 20 boxes because I kind of want to get the logistics down, but we have one box left for the May June subscription. And the next one will be August, September. So I'm basically doing 4 a year right now. And we have one box left. So if that is something that you are interested in, please reach out to me, message me, whatever, and we'll work that out. So again, this has grown out of my own desire to help others heal, because so many times we're looking to the outside world to fill a hole in ourselves, and we both know that the outside world can never fill the hole in us. And so figuring out how to self-love and self-care will fill that hole and heal that trauma, because for so many of us, we are leading with our trauma when we interact with others. Mm-hmm. And healing trauma means I'm interacting with you at a heavier or at a healthier place rather than the trauma. And that may bring a completely different experience to any relationship, whether it be family, friends, strangers, online or offline. So just wanted to take a moment. And you're the first to know, we just got our first discount code for some crazy stickers that are coffee related, that like what I put in my coffee is confidential. So we now have the ability for any order that comes from us, we'll have 20% off. And if you buy in bulk, you'll have 25% off. So Love Over Coffee now has its first discount code with an outside organization. And she sent me the code earlier, and I told her, I said, can we make that code simpler to remember? Because listen, I mean, I already struggle with passwords on a daily basis. So I need that code to be something like Java Love or something. What she sent me was like RPK and, one of those like self-generated codes. And I was like, okay, listen, I'll never remember that. And I don't expect anyone else to remember that. So she's checking with the website people to get us a code that makes a little bit more sense. So I'm excited though to partner with someone. People who know me know 3 things. I cuss, that I drink coffee, and that I wear jewelry, although tonight my ears are naked. But those are the 3 things that people know about me. So I'll share the code when I finally get it, but I'm excited about that as well. So you're the first one to know because I just got the email.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So go enjoy your vacation. Thank you so much for pre-recording.
Thanks, Tina.
I will share this recording probably Thursday night, and I'm thinking around the 11 o'clock hour, because that way it'll go over, but that's okay. We'll just go past, so when we play it, it'll go to from the 11 to probably a little bit after midnight. So that's okay. June 1st is World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. The podcast will begin at 7 o'clock and carry us forward until Kathleen and I will end our conversation. So thank you so much again. You've been listening to Love Over Coffee, Voices Not Heard, and this is a podcast and a platform for the marginalized, the silenced, and the abused. And I challenge each of you, go have a cup of coffee or drink of your choice with someone whose lived experiences may be very different from your own, because it is in those connections, especially post-pandemic, many of us are still craving the normalcy of connections, that you have that reflective moment where You get to listen to them and they get to listen to you. And as much as there is common ground, there is also a moment to reflect and to learn about maybe something completely foreign to you. And so, therefore, in learning about Kathleen, you learn more about yourself and vice versa. So, I challenge you, go find someone who doesn't look like you or think like you, believe like you, or live like you, and go have a conversation. So, with that, we're going to say good night. Any closing words or final thoughts, Kathleen?
Just thank you, Tina, for having me on. I love coming on and doing these podcasts with you. It's a blessing. So thank you.
And we need to get together for our birthdays, and I need to come to Louisville. So we got to work that out. But
Okay.
I will talk to you soon. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. So thanks, everybody. Good night. See you Thursday at 7. Well, actually, it'll be past that, right? I'll see you. I'll see you.